Let's do this as always. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Chilluminati Podcast, episode 18. Yeah, worthy of noises, episode 18.
I'm excited for this one.
Me too. We are diving back into the world of the late 1800s, early 1900s, and tackling the lady we spoke about last episode just a little bit, Jane Toppan, also known as the Angel of Death, and or an Angel of Mercy in some people's minds, a devil in disguise. One of the most prolific female serial killers to ever exist, and probably one of the most prolific serial killers to exist in that time period in general. While we don't have a very specific number of how many she's killed, the estimates are somewhere around 100.
Both delighted and horrified to be back on a similar theme.
Yes, we're going to cover this one, and then next episode we go into the paranormal world again. We got to get like a breath of air.
This is why people don't trust doctors.
A body count of 100?
Somewhere over 100. The reason we'll never know, and we'll talk a little bit about it, we'll talk a lot about it, obviously, but after she was convicted, the hospitals that she worked at would refuse to release the records of her old patients because they were too worried about their own
like lawsuits and shit.
Yeah, it was less lawsuits, but more of their what do you call it?
Reputation.
There's a word. For some reason, reputation was not coming to my brain.
Yeah, we don't worry about that, so we're good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The thing that gets me is that other one, it's like there's no idea how many people she killed when she was working for that doctor. I would love to just hear from somebody out there who has some more insight into that. There has to be somebody, right?
Well, I think that's the point, is that the reason they become nurses or doctors or whatever the case may be is because you can kill people who are technically already dying of something.
Yeah. She would actually use that as an excuse a lot of the time. She killed because they were already going to die anyway, so who cares? Exactly.
Who cares?
Yeah, well, yeah, obviously, but that's, she's a psychopath. That's the point.
Does that work with any jury and anywhere? Who cares?
No, God, no.
You know what? You're fucking right. Let's just let him go. Who cares about? I didn't know that fucking person.
Who gives a shit?
That's why in the eyes of a killer, you're an angel of mercy, because you're like, I'm putting them out of their misery.
Exactly.
You do it to a dog, why not a man? Like that kind of crazy stuff.
Well, you just secretly, you want to kill him, and you're killing him.
Right, but a lot of killers have to justify why they kill because they don't want to look at themselves like they're monsters. They don't see themselves that way.
Right.
That's
Even
like
though they
when
totally
I get
are.
a Diet Coke with my like Big Mac meal.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, you're eating healthy because it's a Diet Coke.
Same exact thing.
Yeah.
Diet Coke is they're gonna die of a disease anyway of drink choices at a fast food.
What's like a Coke Zero then?
Yeah.
Diet Coke is the Jane
Coke
Toppan
Zero
of drinks.
A Coke Zero is just taking care of them. Helping them back to health. Being a nurse.
Being the nurse. Well, Jane Toppan's a little different than a lot of female serial killers. We're going to actually go over a few statistics before we get down there. But before we do, as always, a big shout out to assistant researchers, both Nathan Leonard and Deanna Davis. They went real deep on this one for me and pulled up quite a few references. Outside of the book that all of us actually ended up reading, the researchers and myself, Fatal by Harold Schechter. Great little book. Also, other things is that we pulled some statistics from is a study in a study of serial killers from since 1846 up into the 1950s in a book called Serial Murders and Their Victims, as well as Lethal Ladies, Revisiting What We Know About Female Serial Killer, the Journal of Forensic Psychiatry and Psychology, and the Journal of Forensic Psychiatry and Psychology 26330, numbers referencing the actual document. There's a lot of things to talk about when it comes to Jane Toppan, specifically her motive, her drive. So a lot of serial killers, as we talked about last episode, they're product killers, right? They kill because they want the end product, whether that be money, whether that be the body itself, or whatever. The actual act of the murder is not what they want.
It's a means to an end.
It's a means to an end. Whereas Jane Toppan is actually what we would call like a process killer. She enjoyed the process of the actual killing. That is what she got off on. And she was one of the very, very few female serial killers who killed for sexual pleasure. She was in a study that
Jane Toppan?
Jane Toppan was a sexual serial killer.
Whoa, yep. I didn't know that element of this.
Yeah. So for females specifically, usually the reason that they kill is material, money, or gain, so product killing. And usually the statistic for them is around 74%. So 74% of female serial killers do it for the end goal. 24% do it for miscellaneous reasons: drugs, cult involvement, cover-up, feelings of inadequacy. Kind of, it's a smorgasbord of things that it covers.
That is a smorgasbord that went all
Yeah.
drugs, cult.
Yeah, cult. Which
went
means is like, somebody who was doing this study, like, ran across like 2 ladies who were cult killers for whatever
This is
reason.
a
He's
Wheel
like,
of Fortune
cult?
category that is at
Potpourri.
one thing a list of things that a serial killer might be
Yep.
motivated by, but also my Netflix search history.
13% of female serial killers usually kill because of the control it brings. Just the power, which Jane definitely dips a couple of toes in there. Also, 11% do it out of just the sheer enjoyment of it, and then the last 10% do it for the sexual gratification that they get out of it. Jane kind of dips her toes into control and enjoyment, but she is firmly, the rest of her body sits in the sex part, and that we'll talk about that after. As a comparison, male serial killers, 55% of male serial killers kill for sexual gratification. Almost all of them, the majority.
55%?
Yep. 55%.
Yeah,
Makes
that
sense.
makes a lot of sense. Comparatively to women, it makes sense.
Yep. Men then following that, control, right under sex at 29%, money under that, enjoyment under that, and then after that it's like racism, hatred, mental issues, cult inspired at the very bottom, and then just for attention,
Cult-inspired.
2%.
Just for attention.
Yeah, 2% of males do it for attention.
What is like the Zodiac killer?
Yeah.
I see.
The last thing we'll cover, statistically, just so you understand where Jane sits, the methods. Female serial killers almost always kill with poison. 80% use poison. Followed by 20% shootings, 16% bludgeoning, and then 16% suffocation, followed by 11% of stabbing and 5% drowning. Compared to males, which 41%, the majority of them use firearms, shortly, like right underneath at 37% suffocation, 34% stabbing, then bludgeoning, firearms, poison, drowning, and then other at 2%.
Other
Yeah, don't know what other is.
laser
Just
gun?
Other, yeah, laser gun, Bond villain style concoctions.
Sharks with freaking laser guns on their heads.
Exactly.
That you didn't even try. You didn't even try.
No,
I
I
don't
didn't
have
know.
I don't have a Dr. Evil. What do you guys expect from me? What do you want from
Apparently more
More.
than that.
More is the answer.
me? Give me sharks with freaking laser beams on their heads.
No. You know what? It's even a bad reference. It's like a 20-year-old reference.
This is
It's just
I
not
am
good.
washed up. Where did the time go? This is the black and white version of Logan right now.
Thank
that
God
you're
we
watching.
got you at like your twilight years in your career for this show.
Just before I died. Yeah.
Yeah,
They got
yeah.
me. The last interviews, the last tapes.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Jane Toppan, shall we? Or should we say her actual birth name was Honora Kelly. She was born...
Whoa,
Yeah.
whoa.
Honora Kelly, yeah. She was born in 1857. Honora, Honora.
That's one of those.
Unless you say
Honora.
Honora?
1800s.
Yeah, late like
Yeah, no,
18,
that's 1800s.
1857. Yeah.
Honora?
Oh, Honora seems better.
Yep. She was born to a father by the name of Peter Kelly and the wife, Bridget Kelly, and had a couple of sisters, Delilah Kelly and Nellie Kelly. Not much is known about her mother.
Shut up. She did not have a sister named Nellie Kelly.
Yes, she did.
That sucks.
That's the name? Or just having a sister named Nellie Kelly?
Both.
Both.
Really.
It would be
Yeah.
like a thing you had to apologize for your whole life.
Right?
I guess. So not much is, like I said, not much is known about her mother. Her mother died when she was very young of consumption, or
the consumption.
or who knows, arsenic poisoning. God knows at this point. Could be either one.
Could have been the other one.
And Peter Kelly was a horrible father. He did not keep custody of his children for very long. He was a tailor, a chronic drunk, prone to violent outbursts, allegedly institutionalized at some point for trying to sew his eyes shut, which was after he gave up his
Holy
children.
Shit.
Yeah, and then in 1863, he gave 6-year-old Jane, who was Honora at the time, and 8-year-old Delilah to the Boston Female Asylum, which is where really our story picks up. So if you don't know what the Boston Female Asylum is, it was a building set up in the very early 1800s. I think it was like 1803. And it was for, parents or orphaned young girls to go and get refuge, more or less.
It seems like it was probably a awful building.
Honestly, for the time, it did a great service. It did more good than bad.
Really?
It was run by a board of all females, so it was only women who ran the building.
Oh, wow.
And even to get accepted, the parents who were trying to give up their children had to basically fill out paperwork and apply. And early on in its career, they were very picky and choosy, but as time went on, they were a little bit more open about who they take in. In 1910, the organization was changed from that to the Boston Society for the Care of Girls instead of the Boston Female Asylum.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yep. So she was actually dropped off and given to the Boston Female Asylum in 1863, putting her at just like 7 or 8 years old, as well as her sister Delilah, who would stay there as well. Nellie Kelly did not end up going there, and the reason is to be believed that she was too old, that she could not be bundled with the other two sisters, and they wouldn't take her because she ended up being too old. And she was committed to an institution at the age of 20 later on for violent outbursts.
Can I ask like a crazy question? Kind of off topic, but I feel like the two of you know exactly. Like you'll have answers for me, and maybe people listening too. Did our perception and idea of what a air quotes modern family, what that is, only exist in the 50s, and then we just kind of imagine the 50s being like peak because
Yes.
every time we look back at the past, every time we do anything, it's like man meets women, or like man meets woman. They have like 16 kids. Woman dies. Man leaves the kids because he doesn't care, and then half the kids are dead, and then they move on. That's like the story of everyone from the 1800s.
Yeah.
And before that, it's even crazier. And then all of a sudden, you have this sort of like, even in the 20s, it wasn't like this. Yeah. And then suddenly, the 40s, 50s, you have this like, hey everyone, welcome to Perfect America.
Would you
one
say
man, one woman,
would you say it's a
2.5
result of?
kids.
Would you say that that kind of lifestyle is a result of post World War II, like a post World War II world?
It definitely is part of that. It's part of the whole baby boom and
Yeah.
them being like, have
Peaceful.
kids, GIs, when you come back. But I also think it has to do with, that was the first time there was like real television propaganda, and they kept showing you what the perfect family was. So I think people just...
We're too big. We're too big. Like, at the time, originally we had democracy because we needed to vote based on our needs as people. But, like, now we have to simplify everything, so there has to be, like, a standard family.
Yeah, it's crazy because I get all the different reasons in the past why you would have, like, 8 kids because half those kids would be dead. Like, I get the reasoning behind everything.
Hedging
but
your bets.
Yeah, that's truly what it was. It was, you had to make sure that you had kids to raise. It was also kids would raise other kids, and kids would go work, and it was a different world. But it also seems like the idea that when everyone's like, "This a family has always been a family, and it's always been," no, it hasn't.
Definitely not.
Hard false. That is
No,
inaccurate.
the idea that there is a family unit like that is like probably part of why there are serial killers in like the time when all those people that were born in the 50s like became like 22 years old.
When the 60s
Yeah.
and 70s hit. I can imagine, like, again, I think you have a point where, like, that's the time where television and radio and all that stuff could put forth these idyllic lifestyles. How many of those perfect families had, like, a father who was a massive violent alcoholic and beat
most
their
of the
family?
perfect
Like,
families of the 50s were fake.
yeah, exactly.
Right? The idea was like dad was an asshole and mom was just drinking because she didn't want to handle it, and the kids ended up becoming, assholes too.
John
That's
Wayne
what
Gacy.
Mad Men's about. Yeah, that's the actual plot of Mad Men.
Yeah. So while Delilah and Jane did stay in the Boston Boston Female Asylum, God, that's such like a gross name. Even thinking about it, it's like very, very kind of
I'm
straightforward.
blown away that it's run completely by women in the
At this time, that is
1800s.
that is worth noting.
Well, let's also be very clear that the word asylum has a different connotation now.
Also true. Yeah, also true.
Asylums back in the 1800s were literally a place where you'd go for asylum. Like it
Right.
wasn't.
That's very true.
Yeah, it wasn't like a place. We now associate it with like the asylum for the criminally insane, like it's a Batman villain locale.
Yeah.
But way back when, asylums existed literally just where people could go to be safe. It was a refuge.
Yeah.
And so in this case, they sent the girls there because you can't keep the girls with that dad, and it's a place run by women. They're going to try and look out for them. Is the idea.
Well, maybe this family was just doomed from the start as well. With the mother dying so early, the father being a violent alcoholic who then kind of went nuts himself. Nellie, like I said, didn't even get to go to the asylum, and she died. She was committed to an institution for violence at 20 years old. Bridget would also, Delilah, or Delia is her name, would actually be in the asylum until 1868. Until she would eventually be placed as a servant in Athol, New York at the age of 12. Later, she turned to prostitution and eventually died a destitute alcoholic in squalid conditions.
Jesus Christ.
Not great. So for those who don't know as well, what this asylum would do is they take the girls in, they would teach them basic life lessons for females at the time. Sewing, cooking, that kind of thing. And then eventually what they would hopefully do is quote unquote lend them out or hire them out to families that would then take the children in and basically use them as indentured servants.
Yeah, that's not cool.
Yeah, that's kind of what happened.
Especially a 12-year-old. You're going to send a 12-year-old out to go work. Yeah, no, I get why she was like,
we don't have the
prostitution's
internet.
easier.
Yeah.
Easier and probably safer than where she... Like, can you imagine being a 12-year-old servant?
Right? Yeah. No, it's insane.
I feel bad for her.
Yeah. Well, it would happen
probably
to...
like 5 success stories ever.
Yeah, there's success stories, and obviously those are the ones that are more talked about by the actual asylum at the time. But yeah, them being loaned out to where they would be abused by the family, whether it be physically or sexually, was always happened. But when they were done with their servitude and they became an adult, the Boston Female Asylum would then give them $50 as their stipend as they would go out into the world and be adults now. Good luck, kind of out there. For Jane, she actually only spent a year there before she would be put out into the world. And
at this time, she's still Honora?
She's still Honora until she goes to the family that renames her.
Gotcha. Okay.
So during this time at the asylum,
just straight up changed her damn name.
Yes,
they're like, you're not this kid anymore. Now you're our kid.
Yeah, she would take the last name of the family that would take her, and then she would have a new first name. The reason is too, this is important as well, is her and her whole family were Irish at this time, and at the time they were looked down on, made fun of.
Kelly, right?
Yep, exactly. And Jane, while at the asylum, garnered a reputation for being a very big storyteller. Lots of lies, fantastic fantasies as her father being like a captain at sea and doing all these wonderful things, and what an amazing family she had before she had to be put here because her family had to go on and do great things. Typical childhood ways of dealing with trauma and making it look like she's not as poor off as she actually is. But she also was a big gossip person. She would spread lies and get people into trouble, but she was always conniving enough to never get the blame, so much so that the teachers adored Jane because she was a tattletale. She would rat everybody out, and it was impossible to determine whether the things she was saying were true or false because most of the time it was true, but then she started sprinkling falsehoods and lies because it made her feel good and empowered her.
Testing the boundaries, yeah.
Well, it's also an attention thing, right?
Absolutely.
She got like rewarded positively for ratting out friends or like other people that were there, and then she would just keep doing it, and she could just make up stuff because she wanted that same feeling of like positive attention. Yeah.
Yep, and that would stick with Jane for the rest of her life. That is something that she would always do, even into her adulthood. But in 1863 and into 1864 is where Jane would be put into the care of the Toppan family.
Whoa, hold on. 7 years old?
So 1857 to 1864. Yes.
Yeah, 7.
Yep, 7 years old. So she was out. She got put out.
Made a servant at 7.
7. Mm-hmm.
Y'all, that's how serial killers born. That's right there. 7 years old, you're a servant.
Yep.
And wait, hold on. And then at 7, they just decide like, hey, we're gonna change your name. That's crazy.
You don't even do that to a dog. Like you shouldn't do that.
Yep.
You shouldn't do that. It's like the dog will not do well.
She actually willingly changed her name, supposedly. Again, she's 7 years old, so, what kind of judgment call can she really make? But yeah, she was indentured to Anne C. Toppan, where despite no formal adoption, she changed her name to Jane Toppan. There are theories as to why she did it, but the biggest one is to try and ditch the Irish heritage. Because during her time with this family, Not only did her tall tales and lies continue, she started making jokes and making fun of Irish people. People from her heritage looked down on them and basically kind of took the position that her foster family did, while her foster family continued to look down on her, but then Jane looked down on the Irish. It was another coping mechanism for her.
Maybe her family was super racist.
So it's interesting because as we move into her teen years here, it's interesting because Jane, there's a little bit of conflicting information. Some sources say that Jane was abused by her foster mother, physically and verbally. There are other sources that say she was not abused, but she was just kind of treated like a servant, just kind of ignored, but well taken care of, fed, had a bed. Which one is real? Me personally, I would probably err on the side of an abusive foster mother. It seems to be the norm back then, but there is a little bit of conflicting information there in case that's important for people out there. But from 1864 to 1873, Jane served. She would lie about her heritage, blamed wrongdoings on other children in school that she was still going to at the time, becoming popular with some and called outrageous and liar by others. She is a storyteller. And in 1874, she would be released from her duties in the Toppan family and given $50 as agreed, but continued to work for the Toppans for the next decade.
Like paid?
So she stayed with them. Not paid, but taken care of. Had a room, had food, had board, that kind of thing.
I see.
Yeah. All the while, the Toppans did have their own daughter, Elizabeth. And through that, Jane would watch Elizabeth, and Elizabeth would get the treatment she so desperately would want from the family. You know, true love, taken care of, treated like a proper daughter. And all those years, almost 2 decades worth of watching Elizabeth be treated like an actual daughter of theirs, would sit and stew with Jane forever because she desperately wanted what she believes she deserved, but was unrightfully taken away from her. Over the course of years.
I kind of agree with her, you know?
Yeah, of course. It's a little girl. There's always that moment. There's always those years when you're looking back at a monster and you really go through their history. And their childhood is usually the point where you're like, man, if things had gone a little different.
Yeah.
What would have happened? If she's a sociopath, that doesn't mean she would have become a psychopath serial killer, you know? But you look at this and you're like, man, if she had just been taken care of even a little bit, what would it have been like for her?
Reach out, people.
Yeah, always reach out. Absolutely. That's a good lesson to take away. But that's where the conflicting information is interesting because there's other reports out there that say Jane was not necessarily loved like Elizabeth, but not also like neglected and ignored. But, you know, at that point, at 7 years old, we don't know what happened in those first 6 years of Jane's childhood with her father. We have no idea what life was like. It could have been too late. She could have been beyond destroyed at that point mentally. But then in adulthood, we'd start to see the Jane that we're going to talk the most about. The Jane that would kill. The Jane that did not actually favor arsenic, but instead favored a nice concoction of morphine and atropine.
Whoa.
I don't know I think we all know what morphine is, but atropine is a horrible little drug that when poisoned can cause massive stomach problems, a closed throat, coma-induced kind of mixed with morphine. You'd basically be in a coma where you'd be dying slowly because the atropine would be killing you and the morphine would keep you under. It was kind of a rough combo, and that was what she used for the most part.
Wow.
Yeah. But between 1874 and 1885, Jane did continue to work for the Toppans, working for Elizabeth when Mrs. Toppan eventually died. And Elizabeth...
just going on this, she hasn't killed anyone yet.
Not yet.
She is working for this... The mom dies.
Yep.
Now she's working for the girl she was jealous of.
Oh, yeah.
And now she's like 30?
Yep, we're in 1885. She's like in her late 20s or
28
30s?
in 1885.
Yep,
She's
there you go, late 20s.
Au pair, yeah.
Yeah.
So she's just been working for these people the entire time. This is a strange origin story, but okay.
Yeah, it's very weird. It's very weird. All the while...
Of course this person is a serial killer.
Kind of. All the while as well, she was described as portly and plain. Plain Jane. Jane was not a looker to a lot of people. It is alleged she was being courted by someone for a few years while she lived with Elizabeth, and then that person ran off and ended up marrying somebody a few states away. during one of his job excursions.
That's how it happens.
But there's no evidence that that man existed, and we don't know if that's a story Jane made up.
Oh, I like that even better. You don't know him. He's in a different state.
It's the 1860s version of My Girlfriend from Canada.
Canadian
Yeah.
girlfriend.
You don't know him. He's from Ohio.
She's real. She's
never real. See this picture? Don't Google it. It's real.
She's real.
Elizabeth, the sister, would eventually marry a man by Oramel Brigham, who was a deacon.
Who was also definitely born in the 1800s.
And he looked. There's pictures of him in this book. However you imagine Oramel Brigham to look, you're probably right.
Like halfway between Abraham Lincoln and a hobo.
Oh, definite Harry. Yeah. Oramel Brigham is Harry. There's no doubt in my mind.
He had that thick
beard.
stash. Everybody in the 1860s, if you were a man at all, you had a beard. Here he is right here.
Sideburns. I knew it.
Sideburns, bald on top.
Oh, yeah. That's nice.
And here's Jane. Early in her career. So this is her in her 20s. And this is her when she got caught.
Interesting.
Yeah, there you go. A little picture. If you want to look it up, everybody, you can just look up Jane Toppan 1880 and then 1900 if you want to see what she looked like at those times.
She looks so wise.
Well, she was an incredibly intelligent woman, and we'll get to that as we move on into her more professional career. So, like I said, she lived with Elizabeth for a while, who Elizabeth eventually married a man by the name of Oramel Brigham. He was a deacon. And in 1885, Jane moved out of the Brigham household.
Why?
People imagine that her sister getting married was the impetus for her getting out, because now...
Because it sucked ass, too.
Yeah, well, Elizabeth, even when Jane moved out, Elizabeth gave her a wonderful letter that says, you always have a place to stay here. If you ever need anything, you talk to me, and I will, I'll always be there for you. Meanwhile, Jane hated Elizabeth to her very core. So she moved out, lived on her own for a while, doing some odds and ends jobs, until eventually 1887, she began nursing school at Boston Cambridge Hospital. Nursing school at this time was hell. I don't know if we talked about it last episode. I can't remember, but it was a rigorous two-year thing. Now, in order to become a nurse now, it's a lot longer than 2 years. But this was a up at 5, bed by 11 p.m. You're up all day, up late into the night, taking care of patients, following the head nurse around. It's ruthless. It is constant, and very few people made it through to get their actual license and degree.
But Jane did.
Almost. She almost did it. It's at this point where we believe that the murders actually started while she was in the Boston Cambridge school. This is the place where she ended up getting the name Jolly Jane, actually, because the doctors and the patients friggin' loved her. She was outgoing, outrageous, funny, big bubbly personality. Again, loved to tell stories, and the patients, that helped them when they were in bed in pain. She was a wonderful nurse to be around. But the other nurses in training freaking hated her, because much like she did in school, that whole mischievous lifestyle she brought over into nursing school. She would tell tall tales about her life. There were theories that she was actually stealing little petty theft from people. Obnoxious things would go missing while she was around. Moreover, if she didn't like you, she would sneakily start spreading a nasty, nasty rumor about you among other trainees that would catch fire, and then she would use that to approach the head nurse and doctors and get them kicked out of nursing school if she didn't like them.
Whoa.
So she held power over them like a puppet master. And again, with the doctors loving her, they were never going to question her. She continued to lie about her background, known as devious gossip, and she was suspected of stealing and was never caught. Speculated to have killed dozens while in Cambridge, though we will never know because there's no records, and Cambridge would never release those records at the time. But the way it would usually go for Jane, and here's how the killing started. If she liked you...
awful. Oh, my God.
I'm sorry. I know there's not a lot of break to have like a breath, but we'll get to that here in a minute. But if she liked you as a patient, if she really enjoyed you, she would falsify your charts and then give them a dose of medication to make them stay.
Oh, so this is much like her past when it comes to family and love and attention.
Yep. Absolutely.
It's very similar to the idea of like ratting out other people for the attention of teachers. This is like, if I like you, I don't want you to leave because you make my life better, so stay with me forever.
Hello there, Chilluminati podcast listeners. Before we continue with today's show, let me take a minute and tell you about today's sponsor, Beard Brand. You can find out what style best suits you at beardbrand.com/chill. You see, Beard Brand isn't like other beard companies. In fact, it's not all about beards at all. There are plenty of other products for skin, hair, and beards. This isn't about being more masculine or being the roughest, toughest guy around. It's all about fostering your confidence through grooming. Whether you have a mustache, a goatee, or the full-on beard like myself, Beard Brand has something for you. They encourage us men to be better versions of ourselves, and taking care of your beard is part of that. No need to change who you are, only help you express yourself through great grooming. Maybe you don't have a beard. Don't worry, Beard Brand has you covered, with plenty of product for your skin and hair over at beardbrand.com/chill. Heck, I've been using the sea salt spray for my hair to give it that windswept look you constantly see me with, and it smells damn great at the same time. Beard Brand is all about education and community while fostering self-confidence through grooming. Again, you can find out what works out best for you at beardbrand.com/chill. That's beardbrand.com/chill, beardbrand.com/CHILL. Now, on to the show. That's exactly it. She liked you. She dosed you with meds, keep you there for like another week, and then bring you back to health, and then send you out on your way.
That's fucked up.
This is also where she began what is labeled as her science experiments. She would begin to alternate morphine and atropine to examine the effects on patients, which is why the doctors truly liked her in a sense. Not because she was experimenting, they had no idea about that, but these experimentations taught her a load of stuff. She would know the precise measurements would keep certain types of keep patients in and out of consciousness, right at the bridge of death, and then bring them back again. She would constantly play with the different drugs to see what they did. And when she was arrested and all of her belongings were grabbed, she had a very well-worn book that she was given during nursing school with all kinds of notes about the different kinds of drugs and poisons and what they do and how much is required. She studied it voraciously, more so than any other student that she was training with. She loved it. But we wouldn't really know what Jane did for a while. We didn't know what she would do with the patients or how if she did anything with them, or she would just kind of keep them there just to keep them company. It would be years until, under testimony in court, we would get a small sneak peek into what Jane did, at least to those of her victims that she partially enjoyed, thanks to a woman by the name of Amelia Finney, who was suffering from, at the time, during the time of her training, a uterine ulcer. The night prior, doctors had treated it, as was common back then, by burning it with nitrate of silver, which is how they handled a uterine ulcer, which sounds...
that does not sound pleasant at all.
Nitrate of silver?
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Well, it looks like you have a uterine ulcer. Let me get this nitrate of silver.
Like, hold on. Like, uterine as in uterus?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd imagine so.
Yeah, no, that just sounds unpleasant. It sounds... I can only think of a few entryways, and all of them sound unpleasant when you use nitrate of silver.
They're pretty... Uterine ulcers are common, but, like, that is...
Yeah, that is
barbaric. This is also a time where people still bled people, to deal with fevers. So.
Nitrate is... I forget what I was reading, but it was like something about like every baby they like put like nickel acid in their eyes, like just to make sure that they didn't get any diseases. They just do like one drop in each eye of like pure burning acid. Just like it was like
insane.
Like it like actually like.
My God.
I can't even like whatever. All right.
Yeah,
I digress.
I'm sitting here just thinking about acid being dropped into my eyes.
I digress. It was a fucked up time medically. That's another reason why it was probably so stressful being a nurse. Is because there's not even any real fucking shit. You're doing what you think. You're learning how to do what they think is a good thing. That like 50 years later they were like, whoa, we fucked up.
We shouldn't do that anymore. No, now if you just make a baby read YouTube comments. Same effect, man. Same effect. So what happened the night after that surgery where she got that treatment? Amelia Finney was up writhing in pain all night long. Eventually, as she was in the middle of the night writhing, she claims to have woken up during her fits of sleep to see Jane Toppan looming over her bed. And she asked, Jane what was going on, and Jane asked if she's feeling okay. And Amelia said, no, can you please go get a physician? And Jane said, don't worry about it. I'll take care of you. We don't need a physician here. So she put her arm under Amelia to sit her up and gave her like Lydia Sherman, gave her a drink. It was a type of mineral water that came from a different country. It's Hyoplane mineral water. It basically had a weird bitter taste, and had her drink the whole thing. And within minutes, Amelia started to fall in and out of unconsciousness. It was at that point that Amelia claims, and I'll verbatim say in court, after surgery, Jane administered some bitter-tasting medicine to Amelia to help with her pain. As she was slipping in unconsciousness, she realized that Jane had gotten into bed with her and began kissing her, and began to kiss her all over her face. At one point, actually during this, she would pry open Amelia's eyes and check them with a flashlight. Realizing that she wasn't completely unconscious, she tried to have her drink more. But Amelia was cognizant enough to push that away, and something, nobody knows what, but luckily for Mrs. Finney, Jane was startled by someone and hastily ended up leaving the room. As Amelia gained consciousness the next day, she thought the incident had been a dream induced by the surgery and the drugs that she had been taking, and she checked out of the hospital without saying anything. She only confessed the event in 1901 when Jane had already been arrested.
Does she do that all the time? Get in bed with him and kiss him and shit?
Yep. That is something we are going to see through...
I had no idea that there was that element to this.
Yeah, so what her modus operandi would be, poison them into unconsciousness, climb into bed with them, do sexual things with them, and then as they took their dying last gasps of breath, she would hold them and cuddle them until they died.
Yeesh.
Yes, rough stuff. So, we're still in her nursing school. So that was in the early 1887, during the first year or so, to be believed. In 1888, despite the dislike of her colleagues, she gained the favor of enough doctors to get a recommendation to the Massachusetts General Hospital, which was a big, big step up. Though the head nurse was a bigot and looked down on Jane's low origins as an Irish person.
Why you gotta be hating on the Irish? Why you gotta be doing that?
So she was still like, yes, I'm Irish, or was she like...
No. Yeah, she couldn't, she hated them and spoke down at them, but for some reason...
She owned the
knew.
Irishness.
Yeah, it was something that it was looked down on. The only reason, actually, the head nurse at Massachusetts General took her was because of the insane glowing recommendations of the doctors. During this entire time, Jane was the hardest worker of all the trainees. She was always where she needed to be, taking care of the patients she needed to be, and a lot of her patients, if not most of them, left healthy and were taken care of. And when she took her tests, she would almost ace them every single time. She knew her shit inside and out.
That's why the doctors sucks.
Loved her.
That's why it's so creepy, is because she's like such a good nurse that you would never suspect.
She's a Jekyll and Hyde, because the patients love her. She's this jolly woman taking care of you, and then the minute you're unconscious, she's looming over your bed, drugging you so that she can kill you and derive sexual pleasure from it.
Good Lord.
Awful. So she got accepted in 1888, and in 1889, Jane was named temporary representative during the head nurse's leave of absence, nearly 1 year after Jane had joined the hospital due to how prolific and good she was at her job. The very same head nurse that almost took her, said no to her, she ended up replacing when she went for a leave of absence. For a year, she was the head nurse in that hospital, while still technically training, because she was still completing her courses and stuff at Massachusetts General.
What the hell?
But much like in the other hospital, her colleagues disliked her, suspected that she was blatantly disregarding patients' medication dosages, but had no evidence, stealing, telling high stories, and more patients are suspected to have died under her care during this period that we'll never know about. In 1890, however, Jane is discharged for leaving the ward without permission despite passing her final and her diploma being signed. This was the year she was going to graduate. She was doing incredibly well, but during those couple of years, she was building an intense hatred of her among those she worked with, including actually some of the doctors, because the other students had brought up the worries that she was disregarding patients' medical dosages, and everybody's eyes were on her.
They all hate her?
At this point, in 1890, most of her colleague students hated her, and all the doctors above her had been suspicious of her at this point because people were ratting her out.
But the patients still love her.
The patients still loved her, as far as they knew, because she took great care of them when people had eyes on her and she wasn't allowed to kill them.
I can't believe she was able to keep her job that long.
Yeah, they were basically looking for a reason to get rid of her, and they couldn't pin her for anything. So in the summer, like I said, of 1890, she left the ward without permission, and that was it. They didn't even give her her diploma. She didn't graduate, even though she had her diploma had been signed already. She just got kicked out, and she then spent that fall and then the subsequent year as a private nurse before returning to Cambridge Hospital, the place where it all started.
She got rehired?
Yeah, she got brought back to Cambridge. She never got to go back to Massachusetts General, but where she started, which was Cambridge, she got brought back there because the doctors still, saw her fondly. And she spent a year making very good money as a private nurse because of the recommendations of the people in Cambridge Hospital were still valid, and they were still saying what a great doctor or what a great nurse she was. She was making some pretty good money, but she wanted her diploma more than anything, so she went back in 1891. Before, in the spring, being dismissed from Cambridge Hospital due to the suspicion that she was administering opiates recklessly. And so...
Well, people noticed that something was up. They just didn't know the extent of, what she was actually doing.
The real suspicion started in Massachusetts General, and then presumably the rumors or whatever went back to Cambridge. So when she was at Cambridge, eyes were on her already.
Sure.
But during her first 2 years at Cambridge, the doctors had no suspicions other than her tall tales and kind of obnoxious personality.
So she was only there for a few months, right?
Yeah, she was only back at Cambridge for a few months before being kicked out.
God, that's so crazy.
Yep. But then, in that summer, she began her career as a private nurse, which would be the beginnings of all of her verified kills. All that time, she's likely killed a ton, but we don't know any of it. It's now we know where the verified kills came from.
Verified kills.
Yeah, this is called verified kills. So, in that fall of 1891, she became regarded as one of the most successful private nurses in Cambridge, though her employers, much like her colleagues, disliked her lies and petty theft. In her free time, she liked to guzzle beer, tell lies, and spread rumors, according to those who knew her.
I used to date someone like that.
I used to be friends with plenty of people like that.
Yeah.
But her first verified kill, identified by Jane herself, was May 26th in 1895. At that point, she was boarding with two people, Israel Dunham and his wife, Lovey Dunham. They were in their 80s, pretty old.
Lovey Dunham?
Dunham, yep, Lovey Dunham.
Lovey Dunham.
Lovey Dunham. It's the 1800s, man. We're about to cross
83?
over.
You can definitely have Lovey as a name if you were born in 1818.
The fact that you made
Dunham.
the fact that you made it to the age 83 in 1895 is a high five worthy. Goddamn, you got a great roll of the dice when you were born. That's
Lovey
fantastic.
Dunham. Give me a break.
But she would first kill the husband, Israel Dunham. The reasoning, she said, was he was feeble and fussy, and he was old anyway. He was getting in the way. And then eventually, in September 19th of 1897, a couple of years later, she killed Lovey Dunham, Israel's wife, as she became, quote, old and cranky.
Damn.
She was 87 years old when she got killed by Jane. We're not sure what she did with the bodies during that time, physically while she was poisoning them. But then she lived in the house by herself for a while.
You mean the method, the actual
The method.
chemicals?
We don't know what the method, we don't know what she used. We just know that she
But
killed
everything
them.
else, she's just oh, they're dead. The doctor, take them away.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow.
Because at that time, much like we talked about Lydia Sherman in the last episode, if they don't know what killed her, it was disease of the stomach, disease of the head, disease of the whatever. They didn't they didn't know. But she was super stealthy. Morphine, atropine. Keep in mind, this is not the Lydia Sherman version of up all night with a writhing stomach, screaming in pain. They were slipping in and out of consciousness the entire time.
And she was making out with him and stuff.
Yeah, she was being fucking gross. Then, in August of 29th of 1899, Elizabeth Brigham, her foster sister...
she went back?
She went back.
She killed her?
She went back. She killed Elizabeth Brigham. What she ended up doing was writing a letter to Elizabeth, asking her to come to a little bit of a beach vacation. It was at this point she had already decided that she was going to kill Brigham. And according to Jane's own confession, this was the only person she ever killed out of pure hatred.
So she's what, like 65 years old at this point?
1899.
Born
she was 1857. Yeah.
So Elizabeth has to be like an 42? Old lady.
Something like that. 42 is how old Jane is. She's only a little older.
I don't know how old Elizabeth is, but yeah, 42, right?
Yep, that's how old Jane was. Yep.
57 to 99.
To 99 should be about. This was the only one like I said, she admitted she killed her sister slowly and claimed this was the first one that she did because of pure hatred, and she was killed with strychnine. Which, if you want to Google that.
Strychnine?
Strychnine. Strychnine. I don't know how you say
That's
it.
not a good poison.
No, it is not. So she invited her sister out to a beach because her sister had been suffering from, quote, melancholia. She had been having a rough however long, being kind of down. And her husband actually urged Elizabeth to go. Said, you should go. The beach will do you some good for a few days. Go be with Jane. And she went out. 2 days after Jane came back and said she was super sick and that she was going to go get a physician. And then she went back and finished the job before coming back to her husband, letting him know that she had died, and saying that her final wishes of her sister was that she got the family heirloom golden pocket watch that had belonged to Elizabeth all that while.
Damn.
The husband said he never saw her with that pocket watch, but assumed that she was just keeping it safe because it meant so much to her. When after she was arrested, it was found out that she pawned it the next day.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So she loathed Elizabeth. And again, the reason she loathed Elizabeth is because she perceived her to have everything she deserved and never got. And in December 28th, 1899, would move on merely to the next patient, Mary McNear. Patient took care of her based on Mary's doctor's recommendation. Mary McNear was an older woman who ended up coming to visit one of her family members, got sick along the road, got cold, and the doctor that saw her knew of Jane and what an amazing nurse she was, recommended Jane to her, and doomed her in the process as Jane killed her over the course of time with poisons. It is thought that afterward, Jane stole some of her clothing, and she found this one. Everybody finds this one strange because it's the first and only victim that we know of that she did not know. All of her patients that she killed after, taking care of them for a while and getting to know them and liking them for as best she can. This is the only one that we know that she killed because she was recommended.
Did it because she was her size?
She's like, I love these clothes.
She was like, oh shit,
she's like taking care of them. She's taking care of them. She's like, where'd you get this dress?
I think so. It makes sense if she stole all her clothes. She was like, I want these clothes, but I don't want you. And she just killed her.
She's like, well, you're sick, so you're dying anyway. So,
yeah, I think she just did
take care of it. She just took the clothes.
That makes sense.
But again, anytime you think like Jane does it to only the people she cares about, this shows the shallowness of her character. She has it in her to kill someone she doesn't know and take their shit. Then in January, now keep in mind, this is all happening very, very quickly. In January 15th, 1900, just a month later, she killed Elizabeth's housekeeper, Florence Calkins, her sister's old housekeeper.
Like some mafia shit?
Yeah, she just killed her. Theories being that she took care of Elizabeth and she should have been taking care of her. There are other theories that she was in the way of her trying to get closer to her sister's ex-husband. But she took him out. And then a week and a half later, she killed William Ingram, a patient of hers that she had been taking care of for a while.
What the fuck? It makes me wonder.
3 weeks after that, she killed Sarah Meyer Connors. Sarah Connors. She killed Sarah Connors.
Unreal.
Terminated. She probably...
Who was?
She probably just was killing people all the time and nobody knows.
Well,
Sure.
that's the thing, right? Yeah, that's probably what she was doing. For Sarah, rather, the reason she killed Sarah, she killed her with strychnine, again, as opposed to morphine and atropine, which is usually her go-to. Mind you, that's what she used to kill her sister. In this one, she claimed to have killed her for the position as the theological school's dining matron, given the job by the dean based on Mira's posthumous recommendation. So she killed her
friend to get her job?
to get her job, and then
Yeah.
she was dismissed in November.
Which is why I think she killed that one lady to get her clothes.
For the
She was
clothes,
like-
right.
She's like, finding clothes on my side is very hard. And then she just murdered her. She just
Thank you for
murdered
your
her for those clothes. I'm telling you.
Oh my god, dude.
And Sarah, she considered a friend, but she just wanted her job. So off you go. You know, I'll take care of it. But she was dismissed from that job in November, apparently during that time, killing nobody while she was there.
How do they know?
I mean, that's a good question.
But she
right?
was the dining matron, so she wouldn't have
Right.
any access to, like, stuff. She was there to serve
She wasn't
kids
doing
food.
private nursing things at that
Yeah.
point. She
The dining
maybe she-
matron?
Yeah, she loved kids. She loved kids. Jane adored children. And she claimed to never kill a child.
That's all right, whatever.
So maybe she was happy. Maybe she was surrounded by those.
I can't claim to know what goes on in her head.
Right. It's at this point, my God, we're already running at close to an hour here. It's at this point, this next set of victims would be the undoing of our dear Jane Toppan.
Of course.
Because between July 4th and August 13th of 1901, a little over a month, Jane Toppan would go on to kill the entire Davis family.
Davis!
Which was,
Oh, Davis.
poor Davis. And we all love Davis here. Luckily, he didn't die. Maybe he's related to them.
Or Ghost.
Or Ghost, right.
That would be a twist.
The murdering of this entire family, which would be what brought suspicion down onto Jane Toppan and likely would then lead to her arrest. Surprise, surprise. July 4th or 5th in 1901, Mary Mattie Davis, landlord of the cottage where Jane was vacationing, ended up coming to collect the $500 that Jane owed her. Jane gave her doctored Hunyadi mineral water, that's the water that I was saying has a bitter taste, when she came to collect, and mixed in morphine while she drank it so that she would fall ill and not have to collect that $500. Hunyadi is actually
while
a
she was
laxative.
there?
While she was there, when she came to collect the $500 from Jane, Jane immediately poisoned her with morphine in the water to say, no.
What the She was just like ready to go with some poison?
Yep. She had, it's, again, this is a time where this shit is so easily accessible. You can walk down the street and spend 10 cents and get a ton of it.
That's crazy.
It's insane. Hunyadi is actually a laxative as well, with prominent ingredients of sodium sulfate and magnesium sulfate, so it worked through her body pretty quickly. And during that week she took care of Maddie, she would kill her, bringing her in and out of lucidity, only to plunge her back into a coma while she took care of her. That was another weird thing that Jane loved to do. She would love to bring you out of a coma, take care of you, be loving, and then put you back into the coma, and then do all of her terrible psychopathic deeds.
God damn, this is insane.
Yep, it's crazy. Jane afterward would then move in with Maddie's husband, Alden Davis, where then she would attempt to burn the house down 3 times, and each time the fire would be extinguished.
Can we just, for the record, how much time has passed? Like a month? A month and all this is going. She killed a woman,
less than a
moved
month
in with
that
the
she
husband,
moved in.
tried to burn the place down in a month.
3 times.
That's crazy.
This particular moment is 3 weeks. She killed them, moved in, and tried to burn the house down 3 freaking times in 3 weeks. She's moving very, very fast. And this is actually typical of a serial killer as well. If she truly has been killing all these years, we're starting to see the end game, like the end part of a serial killer.
She has to keep killing.
Yeah, she's killing and killing and killing and killing, and it's the only way to keep her sated. And at the same time, there's probably a point of her like, I can get away with it. Nobody's catching me. Who cares? And she's starting to get lazy.
Moved in, tried to burn down the house 3 times, killed everyone else in the family.
This is only after she killed the Mary, the mother. So then, after she tried to burn the house down 3 times, on July 31st, 1901, Genevieve Gordon, which was their youngest daughter, Alden and Maddie's youngest daughter, would be the next victim. She was distraught over her mother's death. Jane passed off, and then she killed Anne, which is her nickname, Genevieve, and passed it off as suicide. To this day, even in court, she claimed that it was suicide.
Can we take a minute? can we have a talk about just nicknames in the 1800s?
Oh, please, thank you, God, because it confuses me too.
Let's go back through this delightful story we have here. So every time that we've seen someone with a nickname, it has been someone that has a name like John Smith, and his nickname's like
Joey.
Jinglebert. Yeah, like I'm trying to go back through and see some of the ones. So first off, there was Sarah Myra Connors.
Yep.
So Myra has nothing to do with Sarah.
I was saying Mira, but maybe Myra.
It could
Mary,
be Myra.
Maddie Davis.
Michael
Genevieve
Davis.
Annie Gordon. Why are these? It's like
They just
mob
want another.
names.
They just want another name.
It's so
Well, it's
weird.
it's like these. What would be? What's a nickname for Genevieve? Just Jen, right? You would
Jenny?
just use Jen.
Yes.
Jenny.
Vive.
Yeah.
Vive.
Annie makes no sense. It's
Nevi?
crazy to me.
I wonder if there's a story behind it. I wwonder if there's a story as to why that's her nickname.
I figure, like I said, it's like a mob name. Like
Yeah, maybe.
Johnny Big Tuna Scaramucci.
I missed the mob story, man.
Johnny Scaramucci.
Johnny Big Tuna Scaramucci.
Johnny Big Tuna Scaramucci.
Scaramucci. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's weird. It's very, very weird.
It's just something I've noticed this entire time, and I'm like, who? What? Yeah.
So, yeah, July 31st, 1901, their daughter died. She was very distraught over her mother's death, and Jane claims it was suicide.
Okay,
Possible?
look, July 30th.
July 31st, 1901, baby.
Within the span of a month, she kills the wife, moves in, tries to burn down the house 3 separate
Kills the daughter.
times.
Kills the older daughter. Yeah.
Kills the daughter. Youngest daughter. Older daughter still to come.
Jeez.
She kills Genevieve, the youngest daughter. Yep. All in a matter of like 4 weeks. Then, a week after that, August 8th, 1901, it was the husband's turn. Morphine, atropine, in his sleep, held him until his dying breath, she claims, very closely, and made sure he passed peacefully, according to her. And then, a week after that, she would then kill Minnie Gibbs, Aldine and Maddie's oldest daughter. Minnie left behind a 10-year-old son, whom Jane brought to her bedside to cuddle his mother as she died.
Oh my God.
Yep. And it was Minnie's father-in-law, Captain Gibbs, who was police and military, thought that first brought attention to Jane Toppan, and he would end up being Jane's downfall.
I hate
because
this. Oh my God.
Because she was just knocking out the entire family. I can't imagine doing that. Like, I can't imagine, just picturing it movie style. You know, she's dying in bed and Jane comes in. You have this camera angle down at the child's level, looking up at like an ominous Jane, and the kid's really close to the camera, and you just hear Jane in the background, go say goodbye to your mother.
That's fucked up.
Yeah, it's fucked. It's fucked.
She's
And
orchestrating.
This is why I think
she's orchestrating the entire situation.
This is why I think she had a toe dipped into control and just excitement. While clearly most of it was sexual, these little moments where she has power and control over these people, she clearly is leveraging it every time for the clothes or for the job or just to watch a young kid say goodbye to his mother. Like, that's all other aspects of being a serial killer. It's insane that she would do this. And so on August 26, 1901, Edna Bannister, Elizabeth's husband, Ormel Brigham's sister, would be the next one to die. After murdering the Davis family, Jane returned to her hometown to try and marry her late foster sister's husband, Ormel, and killed his sister because she was, quote, getting in the way.
Okay, so she killed the Davises, went back to the hometown, tried to get with her Elizabeth's husband, then killed Elizabeth's husband's sister because she was in the way of that shit.
Yep. That's exactly correct. You've got it, Jesse. Perfect.
That's
so much time has passed too. So much time, and she's still
well, you
like
definitely.
on this.
That's an obsession. She's obsessed with that time in her life that she's like 40 something now, and she can't let go what happened when she was 12.
Yep. It really does all connect back to her childhood. I still after having read the book and like really just delving into Jane's life, I want to know what happened to her in those first 7 years of her life. What did her father do? Was she beyond saving at the point where we started to keep track of Jane? Who knows? It's insane. But that would be the last kill she would get before the good old Captain Gibbs would start to put things into motion to get Jane under arrest. August 29th, 1901, Captain Gibbs reached out to the leading toxicologist in Massachusetts, a man by the name of Leonard Wood, wanting to exhume the Davis family in its entirety to prove that they were poisoned by Jane. Jane ends up seeing this in a paper as it made news in the city because of Captain Gibbs' position in the police force and what he used to do to serve.
Then she left an outline of dust in the shape of her body behind as she ran away from where she was
like,
standing. Yeah,
just poof, just gone, Looney Tunes style. When the bodies were exhumed, Officer James Patterson was assigned to keep an eye on Jane the whole while.
Is this before he became a famous novelist?
That's quite a few many years beforehand. No, I'll indulge you, Alex. I liked that show.
Officer James Patterson, author of that superhero kids book series.
Is that what superhero kid?
I don't.
Underpants? Captain Underpants?
No, what?
I don't know who James Patterson is.
James Patterson is like the author of so many books that it's like
they're all like thrillers.
He's the Alex Cross guy.
Yeah.
Like Along Came the Spider.
That sounds familiar.
He's Women's Murder Club. He's just like whatever. Doesn't matter. He's just
That's fine. I'm glad I know now. Feeling the walls closing in on her, on September 29th of that year, Jane attempts suicide by overdosing on morphine, which is weird because she fails. And frustrated by her attempts to court Oramel, she attempted suicide again, and once again back on her feet, Oramel kicked her out.
She just didn't actually want to kill herself. She was like being dramatic, probably.
Well, yeah, that's how I believe, because she spent how many years learning the perfect dosages for murder and killing, and she fails to poison herself?
She didn't have the stones.
She couldn't do it. Yeah, it was clearly kind of like a desperate attention kind of thing, at least in my mind. If you're gonna sit there and tell me over the course of however many years you can perfect your poison dosages and kill whoever you want whenever you want, and you can't do it to yourself, I don't believe you for a goddamn second.
Right.
It is even alleged that at that time she tried to poison Oramel and then nursed him back to health to show that she was indispensable when he tried to kick her out.
So it's on record that he got sick around that time?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So, she tried, but she didn't kill him because she wanted to marry him. She wanted love. She wanted to be taken care of and looked after just like Elizabeth did. And Oramel is a literal living embodiment of everything Elizabeth used to have. And she wanted it. She didn't get it. She got kicked out. 1 month later, October 29th, Jane is then arrested for the murder of Minnie Gibbs. All the toxicology reports had come back. All of them had said, oh yeah, poison. Absolutely. And they were put out for her arrest, and she was taken pretty quickly because she had been being watched by James Patterson this entire time.
And he used her to as fuel to write
and
many,
and a lot like Lydia Sherman in the last one as well. An entire news carnival circus went up around this angel of death killing an entire family and all these other people and possibly killing hundreds more. The nurse that killed those she cared for. In the newspapers, everywhere, the rumor of the towns. People gathered the courts on October 30th, October 31st, 2 days after she was arrested, to see the woman who had killed everybody. And what they saw was an incredibly plain, boring, slightly overweight woman that people were just purely confused that this is somebody who could kill so willingly and meaningfully.
God, every detail of this case that came out probably just drove everyone insane. Like, the sex thing, like murder, families. She's a nurse, like all this shit. Like, oh my God, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night.
And of course, people are putting in their own like, oh, she was possessed by the devil. No one who of their right mind, not possessed, not cursed by God or whatever, would climb into bed and do the things that she supposedly did and blah, blah, blah. But really, it's just she was a broken human being. There was nothing up there that really could connect to humanity anymore.
God, that is fucking crazy, man.
Yep. And on October 31st, 1901, Jane pleads not guilty at arraignment.
Halloween.
Yep, Halloween. Very fitting, isn't it?
That's crazy.
Very fitting. The state posited that Jane used arsenic, but it was found to have been in the embalming fluid. It was Captain Gibbs that suggested morphine and atropine. Because, again, if it was arsenic, I think she would have been caught a little bit quicker, especially in the hospitals. But she was given access to everything there. And
she was
found
like experimenting,
morphine.
Yeah.
She was truly experimenting on humans. Living, breathing people. Using them as nothing but science experiments.
That's crazy.
In November 21st, a little less than a month later, the bodies of Alden and Maddie were exhumed, and on December 6, 1901, Jane is officially charged with the 4 murders of the Davis family and once again pleads not guilty. Some time passes, and on March 31st, 1902, papers reported that Jane had undergone evaluation by a panel of psychiatrists and was found to be insane.
How the fuck did she explain this? That she's like, not guilty. I didn't do it. No.
Insanity. Not guilty by reason of insanity. Sure. She admitted to 11 murders and a sexual impulse to kill. That was kind of what she clutched to.
Good
and
Lord.
so in June of 1902, the true trial began. June 23rd, 1902, the trial of Jane Toppan took a total of 8 hours with only 20 minutes.
11 murder victims in 8 hours?
Right? All the evidence had been there. With only 20 minutes of jury deliberation thereafter to find her not guilty by reason of insanity. Now, you might freak out and say, oh my God, how could you? But if she had been found guilty, it would have been death penalty, and killing a woman
just wasn't
at that time was not looked on very well, even by government. Most serious, like Lydia Sherman, she didn't get killed either. She would have been hung, but she didn't. So she was sentenced to life in the Taunton State Hospital, also known as the State Lunatic Hospital at Taunton and Taunton Lunatic Asylum. Lizzie Borden said she did time there, though her claims were disproven. Fun fact: Lizzie Borden claimed that she went there.
Any place that has the word lunatic in the title, you can't. That's not good. That's not good.
It's here where Jane would spend the rest of her life. June 24th, 1902, she is delivered to Taunton Hospital, and she dies of old age in the asylum in August 17th, 1938.
Oh my God, she spent another 36 years there?
Yeah.
She probably ran that place.
Yeah. Well, yeah, apparently while she was there, her personality really calmed down, whether it be because of the meds they were giving her or what have you, but she truly, apparently, just really the edge came off, and she had no impulse to kill apparently while she was there. So she says, in her confession, she said she was glad to have been found not guilty by insanity, and she felt smug at having duped the panel, likely because she assumed the hospital would find her sane and release her soon after. That did not happen.
What?
Yeah. And as Jesse had been speculating before, the correlation between Jane leaving the Toppan home and her sister's marriage is kind of undeniable in a lot of ways, but there is no hard evidence that she left for that reason. In her later confession, she blamed being jilted by a lover as the root of her problems, and she may not have killed if she had been married. That's what she claims. That's the person I talked about early on in the episode that supposedly ran off and married somebody else.
The system just did not fucking work for Jane Toppan.
No, not even
she
a little
got
bit. But
bodied.
the system at the time was probably already very fucked up.
Yeah,
right.
That's true.
Yeah. Related or not related, her mental state did deteriorate at the asylum, making her docile until death. And ironically, she refused to eat the hospital food because she had been afraid it would be poisoned. So she wouldn't eat it.
Yep.
And to quote her herself, Jane Toppan, the serial killer, said, "Most of the people I killed were old enough to die anyway, or else had some disease that might cause death. I never killed children. I loved them." And that is the life story of Jane Toppan. It's kind of a blast through, but I didn't want to make a Jane Toppan episode. I didn't want to make 2 Jane Toppan episodes because unlike Tommy Patera, his life murdering was not nearly as interesting as his life murdering. She basically, personal nurse, killed them, messed around with them sexually, took their shit, moved on. That was her modus. That was kind of her operation standard at the point. But she is a fascinating person. Her whole early life truly, in my opinion, dictated what she eventually became. And she got away with it as long as she did because of the time. It wouldn't it wouldn't happen nearly as much. It wouldn't happen at all, I don't think, this time around.
Crazy.
I just find her very interesting as a killer, as an individual, and I hope everybody listening and the both of you did as well.
Yeah. It's one of those things that it's a at the time kind of thing, right?
Yes, very
this
much
could
so.
never happen nowadays. There's too many stopgaps and too many things that. But with that said, it's fascinating that during big transitions in urbanization and things like that, where there aren't really any rules, like in the Wild West, right? That whole thing. It's fascinating to see what people could get away with doing. That now you're like, What the hell? How'd that happen?
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, even Lydia Sherman, you think back, remember, she did something similar. She fucking knocked out an entire family and got away with it and moved away and killed a bunch more people. Just no suspicion whatsoever. Obviously, a little bit of a darker topic, clearly, than some of the other things we've covered, but I genuinely have a fascination in this kind of stuff, and mixed with history, it's interesting.
The thing that's fucking me up about it the most is like putting myself in the situation.
It's impossible to.
Yeah, it's just so fucking weird, like thinking about people murdering people this way, because it's so much less about like the murder, like the murder being like the release that it is for most.
Yeah.
Like in movies, that's like all it ever is like the release, and it's
well,
just
yeah.
so
I mean,
fucked
you
up.
look. You look at all the serial killers that are the most famous during the 60s, all the male ones, and they're all violent killers because that's their release. Like that's how that ends up. But this is what it was for Jane. Side note, I think Alex's name would be Oramel Brigham in the 1800s. Alex, you look like an Oramel.
Yeah, you look like an Oramel, Alex.
You definitely look like an Oramel.
I got that Amish guy thing going on.
Oramel Alex Brigham was what you would have been.
Well, if you
It doesn't look as Amish with the headphones off.
well, you got to shave your head just like he was bald.
Yeah.
Right.
You got to keep only the chops.
Get rid of the chin hair and
just the
mutton
chops to the stash.
Just get rid of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, now that is a look.
Run for president.
go.
Get shot by my opponent. Yeah, I got.
That also very more common than it should have been.
Start a
in the
railroad
1800s.
or train company.
Yeah, damn, yeah.
Probably
You'd
a
be
bad thing to start in 2018, but
Well, but not in
Yeah.
1864.
well, but I'm definitely feeling the vibe at the very least. Got to get that Red Dead going.
We'll be stepping away next episode from the super dark serial killers, and we're going to be, for those who are excited, we're going to be talking about the Fengdu ghost city in China that dates back over 2,000 years. And according to legend, 2 Eastern Han Dynasty imperial officials used Taoist practices to become immortal over there.
And they're there now.
How fun. They're still there to this very day.
From super
according
dark
to some theories.
to supernatural. I'm excited.
Oh,
yeah, we gotta,
no.
I'm excited.
Look
I'm
at
excited.
season 2 of the Chilluminati
Oh, I'm excited.
Yo, see-
tagline.
We are almost at year 2. February is year 2 for us.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. Yeah, I figured we dove too deep. We got to come up for some air. Let's talk about some insane shit. Still waiting for that Jesse Run episode. And Alex, if you're looking up something insane, let's do it.
I've got
I'm ready
some
for it.
baby notes on a couple things, but as per my custom, I will not share them with
I
you.
have some
till-
notes
Yes,
on a
okay.
baby, so
Ooh, is
Yeah.
it Dodger's baby? Is she super cute?
I'm not even sure that baby's real. Could
You've
be
been-
a hologram.
okay.
That's
I'm
what your
on.
episode's
I'm
about?
on. I'm digging in deep. It could be a hologram. This whole
That's
thing.
the thing.
It goes all the way to the top.
Just like your friend's house, like in the neighborhood where you live.
That's where all makers leftover money went.
Yeah.
Project
Making a
Dodger
baby.
2.0.
Project Dodger 2.0. They were looking for a replacement host.
Les Enfants.
Shout out to everyone who has no
Terrible.
idea who Dodger is listening right now.
That's
God
very
bless.
true. We have a ton of people who listen only to this.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's wrap this up
Google
then.
it.
Thank you everybody for listening. As always, hey, we have products. Go buy them. Support us. It's fantastic. We've got t-shirts, hats, and stickers. And we probably have some other stuff working in the background that we can't talk about for a little while until they get approved. But go check that stuff out. As well as if you listen to us on iTunes, rate us 5 stars. We're almost at 600 5-star reviews.
Guys,
Woo,
seriously,
please.
go pick up that hat. That snapback hat is so cool.
I love that hat.
It looks
It's part of my set.
like, look it up. Just like, you know what? If you're one of those people who's listening and you're like, I'm not going to buy this, there's no way. Just do me the solid of looking up the hat. Just go look and see how cool the hat is first. You're going to be like,
Yeah,
oh shit,
please do.
maybe I do want this. I'm just
It
saying.
is dope. And as always, a big thank you to our sponsor, Beard Brand, for hooking us up. We appreciate you guys watching over us.
Make me smell
and,
good, making people
making
think
me
I
smell
have my
damn
shit
good.
together in real life.
Yeah, hell yeah, it's great. And as always, follow us on Twitter. Jesse Cox for Jesse, Faciane A for Alex, and Mathis Games for myself. We will be back in a couple of weeks, as we always are. Well, usually are. And we'll see you then. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.